I've always felt at home at 35,000 feet. There's a strange kind of peace up here, above the noise and chaos of the world below. Flying isn't just my job, it's who I am. I've been a commercial airline pilot for over 20 years, and if there's one thing I know, it's this. Control is everything. Control the plane, the crew, and yourself, and nothing can go wrong. At least, that's what I've always believed. Beliefs are funny things, though. People cling to them, fight wars over them, build their lives around what they think is true. Me? I've never wasted much energy on that. Faith, God, the afterlife. Those were fantasies people told themselves to feel better. Get busy living while you're alive, I'd joke with my co-pilots, because the curtains close for good when it's over. Most would chuckle, but every now and then, I'd see a nervous smile, and I'd quietly roll my eyes. Not surprising, really. Faith is everywhere, even in my family. My younger sister, Clara, is the walking definition of it. Always praying for me, always talking about forgiveness and grace. God's got bigger things to worry about, Clara, I'd tell her. Let's agree to disagree. But even as I dismissed her, I knew I was hurting her. There was a softness in Clara I couldn't understand, something unshakable. And truth be told, I stayed away because I hated the way her quiet faith reminded me of my own empty certainty. As for me, life at altitude made it easy to dodge the messy stuff. Up here, there's clarity, blue skies above, endless clouds below, and the hum of a jet engine in your ears. This is where I thrive. Commanding systems, managing risks, no mysteries, no unknowns. Looking back, I see it now, how blind I was. I gripped so tightly onto my belief in nothing that I didn't leave space for anything else. Not for Clara's love, not for doubt, not for truth. But sitting in that cockpit, laughing off life's questions while cruising through the stratosphere, I never imagined how quickly it could all unravel. Life has a way of sneaking up on you when you're too busy ignoring it. There's something intoxicating about a cockpit in turbulence, the sharp focus, the hum of instruments, the split-second decisions. For me, it was a dance I'd mastered countless times. Tonight was no different. Or so I thought. We were an hour into the transatlantic flight when the first indication of trouble came, a faint shudder beneath my feet. Nothing unusual, planes flex, skies rumble. I glanced at the instrument panel. Everything checked out. Beside me, First Officer Ramirez cracked a nervous joke about the storm rolling in. I smirked, as always, the picture of calm. That's what a captain does. Radiates control, even when the skies grow restless. The second warning came sharper, a metallic groan, followed by the sudden glow of amber lights on the overhead. Hydraulic pressure. My stomach tightened. Ramirez looked to me, waiting for reassurance as the cabin lights flickered briefly. I gave him a nod, reaching for the intercom to address the passengers. Standard protocol. Keep them calm. Keep control. Then it started unraveling. A cacophony of alarms burst to life, electrical systems failing in rapid succession. Outside, the once distant storm engulfed us, rain hammering at the windshield, lightning illuminating the night in staccato bursts. The plane bucked violently, as if an unseen force had reached up to grab it. Adrenaline surged as I barked orders to Ramirez. Procedures raced through my mind. Emergency descent, stabilize power, check fuel feed lines. "For the love of God," Ramirez muttered under his breath, gripping the yoke. God. Why did that word send a chill down my spine? I dismissed it, focusing on what I knew. Systems, logic, control. I would land this plane. I had to. Yet even as I fought, something else fought back. My chest tightened suddenly, viciously. Pain shot through my body like a lightning strike of its own. My breath faltered. Sweat slicked my palms as my vision blurred. Instinctively, I reached for my chest. Ramirez shouted something. "What? I don't know." I crumpled forward, the instruments blurring before me as darkness swelled. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel in control. Only a terrible, consuming stillness. It wasn't the storm outside that terrified me. It was the emptiness within, seeping in as everything slipped away. I waited for the end. But the end didn't come. The first thing I noticed was the silence. That oppressive, gut-punching silence, like the world had been muted. No alarms, no storm, no hum of engines. Just nothingness. I hovered, weightless, detached, as if I'd been unshackled from my body. And there it was beneath me, the cockpit. Ramirez shouted into his headset, sweat pouring down his face as he fought the yoke. A flight attendant clung to the doorway, her face pale with terror. Then there was me, slumped over, lifeless, absurdly still, like I didn't belong there anymore. It didn't make sense. This didn't make sense. I should have been gone, obliterated. Curtains closed, just as I'd always believed. Yet here I was, floating above the chaos, weightless yet heavy with disbelief. I peered closer, trying to rationalize. A reflex from years of control. Maybe this was some kind of hypoxia-induced hallucination? A lucid dream fueled by my body's dying gasp? But no, the details were too sharp. The emergency strobes flashing, Ramirez's frantic cursing. Real. Raw. Then the panic set in. I yelled, screamed even, but the sound evaporated before it ever formed. My hands clawed at the space around me, but there was nothing to grasp, nothing to ground me. I couldn't grab the controls, couldn't bark orders, couldn't do anything. Powerlessness. The very thing I'd spent my entire life avoiding. And then it came, a force, gentle but irresistible, tugging at me, pulling me away from the scene below. The cockpit grew distant, replaced by a warm glow that radiated peace. No, not peace. Presence. It surrounded me, beckoned me, filling my disoriented haze with a pull unlike anything I'd ever felt. But I fought it. Without logic, without reason, I fought it, clinging to the sight of my body below like it was the last anchor to what I understood. Yet, even as I thrashed in resistance, I couldn't deny the light growing stronger, purer. Part of me wanted to give in, to let go, but I was afraid, so much more afraid than I'd ever been. If this isn't the end, then what is it? In that moment, I realized the most terrifying thing wasn't the idea of death. It was the haunting, unfathomable possibility that I'd been wrong all along. The light pulled me into what I can only describe as a corridor, if you can even call it that. It wasn't walls or floors, but a space that shimmered, alive with motion, colors shifting and flowing like melted glass. The air, or whatever it was, hummed, not with sound, but with something deeper, something I could feel vibrating in my chest, even though I no longer had one. At first, it seemed endless, a timeless void stretching in every direction. But soon, images began appearing in the shifting brilliance. Not random images, my images. There I was, young and sharp in my first uniform, strutting to the cockpit, my head high. Pride. Then another scene. My first cross-Atlantic landing, the applause of the passengers ringing in my ears. Confidence. Pride again. These were my victories, the moments that defined me. I puffed up, even now, clinging to that sense of purpose. But the images kept coming. They changed. Clara. Tears streaked her face as she begged me to come home for Mom's funeral. She prayed for you every day, Walter. Clara's voice, so small, so full of pain, echoed across the shimmering walls. I'd dismissed her. I couldn't even remember the excuse I'd used. Too busy, I think. Too self-important. Another memory. A stormy night, much like tonight. My first officer, a rookie, had looked at me with silent pleading in his eyes. All he'd wanted was reassurance. I'd smirked, tossed him a hollow line about sticking to the manuals. I'd missed the fear in his eyes, or ignored it. It was easier. Scene after scene, flaw after flaw, unraveled before me. "No," I whispered. Not that I had a voice. "I wasn't cruel. I wasn't." But the scenes spoke louder than my denials. Clara's voice again, soft but unyielding, rose above the tide. "Life's not about control, Walter. It's about love." That word again. *love period. The corridor dimmed, and something shifted. At the edges of the light, something darker lingered, cold, with a pull like gravity. It reached for me, beckoning. And for the first time, I understood. The light wasn't just calling me. It was protecting me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I shuddered and moved forward. The light brightened, folding itself into a shape, vague at first, then unmistakable. A figure emerged, both radiant and impossible to look at directly. Not a man, not exactly, but it had a presence so profound it commanded my very soul to attention. I felt stripped bare, vulnerable in a way I'd never known. "Walter Hughes," the voice boomed, not harsh, but resonant, filling the space between and around me. It wasn't sound. It was understanding, imprinted directly onto me. Who are you?" I asked, or thought, because my voice vibrated nowhere but in my head. "I am the Keeper," it answered simply. "I guide those standing between truth and eternity." The words landed heavy, like a verdict. A sensation swelled inside me, part shame, part defiance. "I don't belong here," I objected. "I lived my life by reason, by discipline. I did what I had to do." The Keeper's form seemed to shimmer, and I was suddenly keenly aware of the weight of my words. "You defined your worth by your control over others," it said. "You neglected the deeper truth, that love, not reason, binds all creation." Love. That word again. It burned through me, tearing at what remained of my pride. Before I could respond, the Keeper extended something like a hand. The air around us shifted, and a gateway appeared, a shimmering portal that pulsed with both light and shadow. I peered into it and saw myself. Moments stitched together, unraveling into a mosaic. I saw Clara, her hands clasped in prayer, lips trembling as she begged for me to reconcile with God. I had laughed. I saw my co-pilot from years ago, young, uncertain, his confidence deflated by my dismissive quips in the cockpit. I saw a passenger, a stranger, fighting tears during a turbulent flight, eyes silently looking to me for a calm I never bothered to offer. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice raw with panic. "Judgment isn't punishment," the Keeper said, its voice filling every corner of the space. "It is simply truth unveiled." A cold, pulling sensation rose from the shadows in the gateway, growing stronger. The Keeper's light pushed it back, but barely. "Choose, Walter," the Keeper said, its tone heavy with warning. "Step forward, or let the shadows claim the parts of you you'll not yet surrender." I stared into the abyss, trembling. The pull grew stronger. The Keeper's silence stretched endlessly, its form radiating both judgment and patience. The portal before me, this swirling, shifting tapestry of my failures, pulled harder now, as if alive. It was unbearable to watch, but impossible to look away. There was Clara, kneeling beside her bed, her frail voice barely audible through her tears. "God, please save my brother. He doesn't see. He doesn't understand." I remembered the coldness with which I'd brushed her off, the mocking words. "Prayers won't fix reality, Clara." Now her pain clawed at something buried deep within me. The images shifted again. Ramirez, my young co-pilot, hesitating during a storm years ago. His grip on the yoke trembled as he looked at me for guidance. My response was a smug laugh. "You're overthinking it. Just fly the plane." My words had crushed his confidence, his doubt lingering long after the turbulence passed. How had I missed the fear in his eyes? Another memory. A woman in a middle seat, holding her rosary tightly as turbulence rocked our plane. Her silent plea, her wide, anxious eyes fixed on me. I'd smirked and muttered to the flight attendant, "Nothing like a little drama at 35,000 feet." I never even acknowledged her. "Stop!" I choked out. Shame throbbed through me, tightening like a vice. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I didn't think—" "That is the lie you told yourself," the keeper said, its voice cutting through the illusions. "You did not act with malice, but neither did you act with love. You chose indifference, Walter, and indifference is the seed of destruction." The words hit harder than I thought possible. I pressed back, trembling, desperate to defend myself. "I didn't know. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," the keeper replied softly, yet unyieldingly. The shifting images faded, and I felt the pull of shadow growing stronger. My chest constricted with a pain that couldn't be physical, more primal, more consuming. The keeper's light was holding it back, but its voice grew sharper. "You have locked yourself in a prison of pride, Walter. To move forward, you must shatter the bars. What will you choose, love or yourself?" Pride begged me to resist. Fear pleaded for surrender. My silence screamed louder than words. The light surrounded me, washing over every part of me with a warmth I'd never known. It wasn't just brightness. It was alive, pulsating with something beyond comprehension. Love. That word, that thing. I'd mocked my entire life, now filled me completely, dismantling walls I hadn't realized I'd built. Then the light shifted, and I saw him. At first, I couldn't believe it. This figure, this presence, it couldn't be. "You're just a myth," I blurted, though no sound came from me. The figure didn't flinch. Instead, the radiance deepened, and his eyes, piercing yet gentle, locked onto me. "Walter," he said, his voice clearer than thought, "you've spent a lifetime denying what was always before you." I recoiled. "You can't be real. This isn't real." My protest sounded hollow, even to myself. His response wasn't anger. It was sorrow, tinged with patience. "You built your truth on control, and when it broke beneath you, you clung to emptiness." He moved closer, his presence bearing weight, not of condemnation, but of something far heavier, understanding. Images erupted around us, vivid and undeniable. Clara, weeping as she prayed for my soul. Ramirez, his confidence crushed under my cold, cynical mentorship. The woman clutching her rosary mid-flight, seeking comfort I didn't offer. And then me, rushing headlong into ambition, leaving pain in my wake, never pausing to notice. "I didn't know," I whispered. "You chose not to," he said, softly but firmly. "Love was always there, Walter. You turned your back on it." A sinking pull gripped me, and I realized the shadow from before had returned, clawing at the edges of my soul. "Please," I begged, though I barely knew what I was asking for. My chest felt heavy, my fear rising with every passing moment. But he didn't move away. He reached out, placing a hand, warm, steady, where my heart should have been. "There is still time, Walter, but love requires surrender. Will you let go?" The shadow tugged harder, my pride battling against the pull of his grace. My entire life flashed before me, every step that led here. Trembling, I closed my eyes and whispered, "Help me!" And in that moment, the shadow shattered, and the light consumed me whole. The light engulfed me, its radiance stretching beyond sight, yet intimate enough to fill every part of me. I wasn't just standing in it. I was in it, wholly known, wholly seen. Every defense, every layer of pride dissolved. The weight of my life lay bare, a mountain of arrogance and indifference, crumbling under a truth I could no longer ignore. "This is heaven?" I asked, the words trembling from somewhere deep inside. I didn't expect an answer, but a warmth wrapped around me, pulling gently like an autumn breeze. It wasn't words, not exactly, but the understanding came. "Look." The light shifted, unveiling a realm that words could never do justice. Vibrant hues, unlike anything I'd ever seen, pulsed in perfect harmony. It was alive, a symphony of souls, radiant and joyful, woven together like strands of golden thread in a tapestry. They weren't just here, they belonged. There was such peace in their togetherness, a depth of love so complete it made my chest ache with its beauty. I watched as these souls moved, not aimlessly, but purposefully, their motions driven not by obligation, but by joy. They glided toward a central source of brilliance, brighter even than the light surrounding me. From it came the overwhelming sense of presence and love. Everywhere. Love. A pang of recognition struck me like a blow. I had spent my life running from this, mocking it. But now, standing here, I realized how deeply I longed for it. But along with longing came shame. The faces of those I'd failed, Clara, Ramirez, the countless others, flashed before me, sharp as a knife. I turned to the figure beside me, his eyes steady with sorrow and patience. Why would this even be offered to me? My voice broke. "I've done nothing to deserve it." "No one earns this," he replied, his tone gentle but vast. "It is grace, Walter, a gift, but accepting it requires surrender. You must let go, of control, of certainty, of yourself." I froze. Surrender. The word carved through me like the shadow I'd battled. The beauty before me was overwhelming, yet I sensed the door was closing. It wasn't the light that would choose. It was me. Silence fell, and I whispered, "What must I do?" The air around me grew colder, heavier, as the light seemed to tremble, and a new vision unfolded. A chasm stretched before me, an abyss of infinite darkness. The keeper's light remained behind me, faint now, as if no longer shielding me from what lay ahead. I looked down, a knot tightening in my chest as I saw them. Souls, countless souls, writhing in despair. They weren't being burned or torn apart by some imagined tormentor. No, this was worse. They held themselves in chains, clinging to anger, pride, regret, jealous of the light above, but unwilling to reach for it. Their faces contorted, not with pain, but with an emptiness I could feel in my core. "Is this hell?" I asked aloud, though I didn't need an answer. I knew. "It is separation." Jesus' voice surrounded me, not booming, not angry, but steady and sorrowful. He appeared beside me again, his presence warm against the abyss's void. "They have chosen this." The words pierced through me. Chosen! No one would choose this. I pointed at the pit, at the endless anguish. "They refused love," he replied, though his expression held no condemnation. They clung to the lie that control defined them, that surrender was weakness. They feared being seen, known, healed. I said nothing, but the truth pressed against me, suffocating in its clarity. I had fed myself the same lies, clinging to my certainty as though pride would shield me, rejecting not just Clara's prayers, but her love, rejecting everyone I'd dismissed, mocked, or ignored. I'd lived my life cut off, and here it was, the ultimate manifestation of where that path led. "Walter," his voice was soft, "this is not your place, not yet. But the one who resists love also resists life and risks eternity." I trembled, staring into the abyss. The pull I'd felt before was stronger now, all the fear, anger, and resistance I hadn't let go of. Control, certainty. My prison. Tears burned as they spilled. I don't want this," I whispered. "Help me." Jesus' hand rested over mine, firm yet kind. "Say the words, Walter. Surrender and be free." With a shattered breath, I whispered, "I choose love." Everything was still. The darkness that had writhed at the edges of my soul dissolved, replaced by warmth. No, not just warmth. Peace. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not from turbulence or death or some imagined inferno clawing at me. Free from myself, my pride, my doubt, my endless fight for control. The light enveloped me, soft yet powerful, pulsing with rhythm I could feel in the very essence of what I was becoming, a rhythm that sang of love, of grace. Jesus' hand was still on my chest, steady and unyielding. His presence poured into me, filling all the brokenness I'd kept hidden, all the cracks I refused to acknowledge even existed. "You've said the words, Walter," he said, his voice resonating with profound gentleness. He withdrew his hand, though the warmth lingered like an embrace. "Now, trust it. Trust me." The vibrancy around us intensified. Colors I couldn't comprehend bloomed and merged, creating cascades of light that seemed to whisper truths beyond reason. In those waves of brilliance, I glimpsed my life, not the misery of regret shown before, but something else entirely. Small moments, missed chances, 1,000 opportunities for kindness I'd let pass me by. Yet, rather than shame, I felt something else rise, a yearning. "I don't know how to fix it," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know how to make this better." "You won't," he replied, compassion threading every word. "But I can. In surrender, you will find freedom. In love, you will discover what you were made for." Tears streamed from eyes I no longer possessed. A weight I hadn't known I carried. Years of cynicism, self-imposed isolation, rejection of Clara's grace, lifted. For once, I didn't fight it. His luminous gaze held mine, unwavering. "There are still storms ahead, Walter." "Still doubt. The world below is broken, its people as stubborn and scarred as you. But you will tell them, won't you? That grace is real. That love saves." The words caught in me, like a flame sparking against dry wood. "I'll try," I whispered, a promise I didn't fully understand, but meant in every way. The light dimmed. His hand extended one last time. "Then live, Walter. Live and share what you've seen." And with that, I fell, into my body, into the world, into a second chance. When I opened my eyes, the world was a blur. The sterile hum of hospital machinery replaced the chaos of the cockpit. My chest felt like it had been crushed, each breath a struggle, but it didn't matter. I was alive. My gaze landed on Clara, her face buried in her hands at the bedside, shoulders trembling. "Clara." My voice was weak, rasping, barely above a whisper. But her head shot up, tears streaking her cheeks. She gripped my hand tightly. "Walter!" she sobbed, a jittery laugh escaping her. "You're back! You're here! Oh, thank God you're here!" Her words echoed differently now. Thank God. I felt an ache rise in my chest, not from the cardiac arrest, but from something deeper, something raw. Memories of her prayers, her unwavering belief in a grace I had ridiculed, flooded back. Everything I had seen, everything I had denied for so long, rushed through me like a tide. "You were right," I croaked. Tears brimmed in her eyes as I added, "About everything. God, love, grace." Her expression softened, her voice trembling as she smiled. "It wasn't me, Walter. I always knew he'd meet you in the storm." The storm? My mind flashed to the corridor, the keeper, the light, the overwhelming presence of Jesus. His words still burned into me. Trust me. Live to tell others. I'd thought surviving at altitude was the pinnacle of existence, but this was life redefined. In the weeks that followed, I began my slow transformation. It wasn't easy. Shame clung to me, but the peace I had felt pushed me forward. I reconciled with Ramirez, apologizing not only for the cockpit disaster, but for the years of dismissiveness. I embraced Clara fully, finally seeing her prayers as acts of love, not naivety. I hesitated to share my story at first, fearing ridicule, but love whispered louder. Speaking at a local church, I trembled as I opened my heart to strangers. "I was blind," I said, voice faltering, "but now I see." Grace saved me, and it can save you too. Every word mattered because every soul mattered. God will guide you, but I promise you this, it's worth it. If you've been touched by my story, if you felt a stirring in your heart, I encourage you to seek Jesus. Open your heart to him, and he will meet you where you are. Thank you for listening to my journey. If you'd like to share your thoughts or ask for prayer, please leave your name in the comments below. And if you're curious to hear more stories like mine, check out the videos on your screen now. Each one is a testament to the power of faith, grace, and God's unending love.